right. I'm gonna do a second part to this Midwest flooding food shortages video. Just a quick addition to it. Some of the things that I've seen and read and heard about, and since the last video, is that with the Midwest flooding, think about, there's some things to think about besides just the flooding and the crops. Think about all the livestock that has been lost with all of that flooding. You know, we're talking 1 million+ acres that have been flooded out, and all the livestock that has been destroyed and lost in that. So you're talking cattle, sheep, pigs, goats, no telling what else, you know, that's been lost in that. Chickens, things like that. Because you in that area also, you got to think there's a lot of cattle farms, beef farms, and pig farms, and chicken farms, and things like that that's been lost. So it's not just grains, you know, corn and wheat and things that's been destroyed. It's been meat as well, livestock. And the farmers themselves, you know, they've lost everything. Not only have they lost their crops and things like that, but a lot of times, a lot of them have lost their homes and all that. So that's a lot of things. Some of them, I'm not sure. I haven't really seen anything, but I'm pretty sure that there's been several people who's lost their lives as well. And keep those people in your prayers. Now, also, one of the things too about the crop loss, I was talking to a friend of mine this weekend. We were at a YouTube meetup, and this friend had mentioned that, you know, he had been through, his family and things had been through a flood many years ago, so they have some kind of experience. And on their farm that they have, and the EPA comes in and gives them information and tells them what, you know, going forward in the future. Now remember, in this last video and some of the other things that have been briefly discussed, is that there are a lot of oil wells in the Midwest, a lot of oil, and it's been flooded out, and a lot of those wells have been flooded, and those tanks and all that stuff have been flooded out, and that stuff has gotten out into the environment. So that makes pretty bad, you know, growing situation, poisoning the land basically. And well, what he said, which makes perfect sense, is that because of all the contamination that happens during flooding, he said that they could not plant for another 9 months after the flood. So think about that. The current land that has been lost and the crops that have been lost this season will also affect, because of the land, into the next season, maybe even beyond that one. So we're talking 2, maybe 3 seasons for sure that can't be grown on because of the contamination to the actual land itself. So when we're talking about crops being lost, we're not talking about just one season here. We're talking about multiple seasons, 2, 3, maybe even beyond, depending on the damage to the environment, and especially with the oil wells. You know, the oil doesn't, you know, when the water and stuff recedes and dries up, that oil is still going to be sitting there and will be there for a long time. So think about that also. So this flooding is going to be a lot bigger catastrophe than just immediate So it's going to go well on for years to come. So the food shortage is coming. We can expect higher prices, and we can expect a longer extent of it to happen. So get prepared up. And also, they've got another winter blast coming through, because a lot of the water that has happened, that's flooded, was a lot of the snow and ice melting as a result of that, you know, to make it flood. So we got one more winter blast here in April for it to happen. So they're talking blizzard-like conditions throughout some of those areas. So keep an eye on that. So that could extend the flooding after it melts next week, when it warms up again, into more damage. So just some more food for thought, or no food for thought, because it's going to be pretty bad. So it's looking a little worse than the initial thoughts and some of the initial projections, maybe, you know, that people were talking about. We're talking well extended on beyond this season, next season, and maybe a season or two after, just because of ground contamination, the oil wells that are flooded and that are releasing the oil into wherever the water is, and it just travels wherever it goes. So, and that's, you know, being in the Midwest and being here in Oklahoma and things like that, there are oil wells and pumps everywhere. So something to think about. Anyway, just wanted to add that to it. Second part. If you haven't seen the first part, I'll put a link to that below. So keep it heavy.